Hi, my name is Ted Sayles, and this is my testimony. It all started December 31st, 1965. I was born before midnight. I had entered this world celebrating. Born in Detroit, Michigan, moved to Chicago when I was 1. I live at the same location that I do now, and my mom never moved. I can recall times were much easier than what they are today. My family didn't have a lot of money. My dad worked for a moving company, and my mom stayed home watching kids. I remember my dad working late from time to time, and I believe he was out drinking. And when he would come home, they would argue, and I think it got kind of physical. I feared my dad. My dad was 6'2", and had a bad attitude. And I remember growing up, when he said something, you did it the first time. I mean, there was no second chance. You talked back, you got slapped in the face. You know, it's not like the kids today. You know, they get away with murder, basically. But I remember those days, and my dad, along the way, he got hurt on the job, and we had. And he could no longer work, so my mom had to take care of the house, and we were just there, and my dad ended up getting sick. He smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes a day, a chain smoker. And the week he ended up going to the doctor, the next week he died of a heart attack. At the age of 7, my dad got hurt, and then at the age of 14 is when he died. And I was still in grammar school, and that was a big loss in my life. And that's when it all started going downhill. I started drinking and drugging at the age of 14, and it wasn't good. I remember that I was just trying to fill a void. I was broken, and a loss of a family member like a father I wasn't ready for that at that age, and I rebelled. It was a real hard time for me, and before that I just started hanging out with some guys in the neighborhood, and we ended up all drinking, and that's when I met my first girlfriend, and we ended up having a kid. And I was about 19 years old at that time. I had just gotten out of high school, and I ended up going into the Navy. Right after I joined the Navy, she ended up having a child. And I ended up in Norfolk, Virginia, and she ended up staying here in Chicago. There was a separation between her and I. And it was a hard time, and it just didn't seem to work out. And even when I was in the military, my drinking got worse and worse. I basically did my time and got out. I was still a rebel. They asked me to stay, but I couldn't because there's too many bosses, and I was just a train wreck waiting to happen. When I got out of the military, I stayed in Virginia for like another 4 years. I met some people. Of course, they all drank and did drugs. And I hung out with them. I met this lady there, and I was with her for like 4 or 5 years. And then I ended up moving to Tampa, Florida for another 4 years. And during all this, I was able to actually see my son, and I would have him in... I would have him come see me in Florida or Virginia, wherever I was. So we never lost that contact, which was a good thing, and I was kind of blessed by that, because the only difference is we grew up being friends, and I wasn't a father figure in his life until later on. And then when my mom ended up getting married again after I got out the Navy, and she married this guy, and the guy was a pretty good guy, but he had no rules. You could do whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted, and however you wanted. So, I mean, that did nothing for me. So I was still an alcoholic. And after I came back to Chicago, because he ended up dying also, and I came back to Chicago, and I was staying with my mom again at the same location that I am now. And I was still an alcoholic. And my mom, she ended up getting sick, and she ended up having a triple bypass. And that's what brought me into this church here. My life was on a downward spiral. I was an alcoholic. I had 2 DUIs. There was no outlook. There was no promise left in my life. And it just took this church, and when my mom was sick, the compassion they showed, coming and going and just helping her out and cooking meals and cleaning the house. I says, I got to see what this church is about. And I was still struggling with drinking, and they told me about these ACTS classes, Alcohol Chemical Treatment Series, and I started going to that. But no one ever told me that I had to stay for a service. The first service I came to, the first time I came to the ACTS class, I ended up going upstairs for the service, and they were running around, singing, dancing, and I was thinking, these people are crazy. And after a while, I ended up being as crazy as these people are, because these people have a love for God. And these people have a love for God, and I ended up staying in this church because these people preach the truth. And now I'm an elder inside this church, and I'll do anything to save a soul, because this church is what saved me and brought me out of my DUIs. I'm sober for 11 years now. I haven't had alcohol or drugs or anything else. And I thank God for that. And I thank this church for that. And I would recommend it to anybody. Come and see what God could do in your life.